Hello everyone, my name is Celia and I'm a third year in our English language and literature major. And today I really wonder what is going on. Aristotle, the legendary Greek philosopher, said, "Man is by nature a social animal." If being in a society with all the things that come with it, from social interaction to relying on one another, how have we been living for the past 2 years? Well, I'm sure you all heard about the corona blue phenomenon. Different from a depression, the corona blue have been a permanent feature in our lives since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The biggest difference between depression and corona blue is that a depression does not have a precise starting point. It is a condition that can be related to chemical disorders in the brain or addictions like drugs or alcohol, or it can start for no reason at all. Corona blue, on the other hand, is deeply related to the social distancing that has been forced on us since the beginning of the virus. As our human nature craves for contact with our peers, the lack of interaction results in a gloomy state of mind. After the start of the pandemic, and even more during quarantine, people have started to feel depressed and had no idea on what to do to escape their apathy. People from all around the world have been trying to make the time they spend socially distancing helpful, and trends of home workouts or yummy snacks like dalgona coffee, for example, have spiked all over the world. They wanted to make this quarantine worthy by developing new hobbies and sharpening dormant skills, but soon their enthusiasm faltered. What was the point of all this if we can't be sure of when we will be released in the wide world again? For the people who had to quarantine alone and far away from their family are the ones that suffered the most from the social distancing, even though the most introverts of us secretly rejoiced at the thought of some alone time. While being lucky to live in Korea, I never experienced quarantine, and I can only sympathize for those who are stuck at home. However, it has been over 2 years since I could not see my family because of the pandemic. It has not been a day I spent without worrying about my friends and loved ones. The thing is, the coronavirus is not something we can fight with our bare hands, and it makes us all feel restless. How can we fight an invisible enemy, an enemy so sneaky that it can grab on our clothes to follow us home? An enemy that has come to ruin our happiest moments, not letting us celebrate properly a wedding because we cannot attend, or celebrate the birth of a child because look at the world this human newbie will have to live in. An enemy that gave us a word to describe a new type of negative feeling, the corona blue. I think that the corona blue will stay in our memory for a long time and will remain for many as a traumatic experience, because we had to change from the core to adapt to the pandemic. From the warm smiles we kept in our memory, we had to change it to wrinkled-eyed smiles, to one's inherent facial expression that is a trademark of their personality. Now their identity is held in their eyes. The mask that covers our nose and mouth has become a part of our being, and even though it can gather everyone with a single common point, it also pushes us apart. So, I am yearning. I am yearning for the day we will be able to go back to the society, without fearing of accidentally contaminating one another. But at the same time, I am fearing the emotional collateral damages it will have. Will we be able to go back to our societal life without awkwardness? Or will we be a pale memory of what human interaction have been? Aristotle, the legendary Greek philosopher, said, "Man is by nature a social animal." But then again, Aristotle never experienced COVID. To conclude this, I want to say thank you for listening to my presentation, and I really wish you to stay safe and happy at all time. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Yoon So-young, a senior in English Language and Literature. And I'm going to deal with Top Girls written by Carol Churchill, who is a socialist and feminist. As you can see in the name of the play, only top girls occur in Top Girls. So I'll focus on Act 1 with the topic, Sacrifices to be Top. So this is my presentation content. The first part is a brief summary of top girls, that why the characters are called top girls. Then I'll organize the contents of sacrifices to be top girls into two categories. Lastly, I felt the top and sacrifice can be applied to our own stories, which is the competition to get a job these days. So let's begin. Marlene has just been promoted to managing director at the employment agency. And not having a dead lover can make her top girl, relatively. As you can see in her name, Isabella is like a bird to travel more freely than any other woman in this play. So she looks like a selfish person from time to time. Nicho is a concubine to be emperor of Japan in the 13th century, and later a Buddhist nun. Therefore, these three women become top girls by giving something up, like her child or freedom, and by still leaning on power. And despite the least education, Gret is the strong top girl via a war. John is a pope who is smart enough to try to disguise as a man to go to library. The last character, Griselda, she is an obedient wife who eventually earns a reward to get married through mentally challenging tests. Thus, they can be top girls by going through a difficulty. Even though there are personal, cultural, historical differences between women, they have in common that they sacrifice something. Marlene, Joan, and Gret can be top girls in the oppressive conditions by male-centered society with these restrictions you can see below. Marlene cannot choose what to wear in the male-powered company. Joan also has to be shown like a boy to study, and Gret lost her family while being against this kind of society. Also, Griselda, Nizzo, and Isabella and Joan become top girls who cannot stand alone. They all obey him, belong to him, and they are nothing without him, as you can easily notice at these quotes. Then, what makes people the top today? Most of us think being employed at a famous company like Samsung and Google, earning a lot of money, or even just getting a high social status and power. It might help to make you a top, but you've already known that only social success doesn't make you a top human. This is because we also have to sacrifice something to be top. Losing your own color, letting them steal your rights to plan your life. And even nowadays, some companies are still treating pregnant women very unfairly. So, we should follow Marlene's advice. When you get a job at a company, you shouldn't talk about marriage and childbirth. Thus, what is your thought about the true, ideal, and healthy top? Or aren't you struggling to be a top that are sacrificed, just like in this play? Hoping you all consider your life and pursuit to be a top, I'll finish my presentation here. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hwan Kim, and I'm currently in my junior year majoring in English language and literature. First of all, I give my deep congratulations on this 41st anniversary of our Department of English Language and Literature. Today, I prepared my presentation about the way how discrimination comes to us. So please sit back and enjoy. About a year ago, when I went to the US as an exchange student, I was walking with my friend from Hong Kong. It was around 8 p.m. or so, and we were just heading to this delicious Mexican restaurant to get some free tacos of the day. But then, suddenly, crash! The black car came out from nowhere and passed by quickly in front of us. Thankfully, I didn't get hurt, but I could hear my friend scream holding her left arm. She was bumped by the rearview mirror, and the hitting sound was so clear. It was definitely a hit and run. And me and my friend could precisely think, is this the Asian hate crime? Because that crosswalk was fairly quiet and was lighted enough by streetlights. Of course, bright enough to look at one's face and see whether they're white or not. By that day, I felt that I could be the target of crime at any time only because I'm Asian. And I was curious, why would people do such things, hating others and hurting them? So I had a brief research about why hate crimes occur. Many of you will recognize this picture. Yes, it is one of the most horrible hate crimes that happened ever. Nazis' Holocaust towards the Jewish. And I'm pretty sure everyone will think like this. Oh, that's terrible. How could German people let Jewish to be discriminated like that? If I were German, I wouldn't do such thing. But the experiment says different. This is Jane Elliott. She was a third-grade elementary school teacher in Riceville, a white-only village in Iowa. In April 5th, 1968, the day when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, her students blamed the murderer, saying, "Why would someone kill him? He was such a respectable person." So Elliot made the experiment to tell students how discrimination feels and how discrimination can extremely change people. The teacher conducted an experiment that divided students into eye colors over 2 days. On the first day, the blue-eyed group were taught they were superior, and the brown-eyed group were taught to be inferior than the blue-eyed. On top of that, she made the brown-eyed group wear a collar and told them stupid and dirty. However, the superior blue-eyed group received 5 more minutes of break time, and they had the privilege of standing at the front of school meal line. And then what happened was, surprisingly indeed, students began to regard themselves in their group. Students in the blue-eyed group beat and insulted the brown-eyed group, and the brown-eyed group performed much lower score than usual on the same day's test. By the next day, the teacher changed the role of these groups. This time, she taught the brown-eyed group to be superior and the blue-eyed group to be inferior. What was the result? Yes, surprisingly, the brown-eyed group showed the same discrimination and active hatred attitude towards the blue-eyed group, despite their discrimination of the previous day. How could this happen? The students certainly knew how bad discrimination is. In fact, they even blamed people who hated Martin Luther King Jr. What Eliot's experiment and countless examples like Nazis tells you is, people discriminate because they can easily become a disciplinary subject. What is disciplinary subject? It refers to an individual who is tamed to voluntarily obey without being aware of it. To make a person as a disciplinary subject is easy and pretty keen. First, you make the individual within sight. There are many factors that distinguish people from the outside, like gender, their appearance, race, ethnicity, and on and on and on. Nearly everything can be the factor. In Ellie's experiment, students' eye color and the color of the inferior group were those. And if people can visibly see these factors, it becomes much easier to authorize them and regard them as authors who have nothing to do with oneself. Second, make people's behavior a normal habit by controlling time schedule. Elliot controlled her students' time by giving the superior more break, and students got so used to this that they began to think their privileges were a natural thing. This led to losing their perception about the discrimination happening near them. Lastly, categorize and rank individuals through evaluation and records. This method was popular to Nazis too. While Eliot categorized students into eye colors, Nazis not only distinguished the Jewish and others, but also ranked people who reported the Jewish. Even citizens were rewarded and their social security rose according to the number of their Jewish reports. This ranking system made Germans to be competitive about Jewish problem and regarding the Jewish as one of their means, not a human. Of course, I'm not telling you all of these to encourage you to become the next gen Hitler. What I'm saying is that the way to make people as a disciplinary subject is so easy and even horribly familiar. Where could we all find these methods? In our school, the military, the company, nearly all of our life encourages us to become a disciplinary subject. You wear a uniform, you live by the time schedule, you get graded and categorized from someone. Under these circumstances, it is nearly impossible to avoid committing discrimination just by knowing the fact that discrimination is bad and saying, I wouldn't do such thing. Sadly, still, there is a lot of discrimination going on around us. Now is the time for us to recognize that we can always commit discrimination and always be targeted of that discrimination. If you can visibly see it or feel the control time schedule and the ranking system, stop and think. Because that must be the point, either you are committing discrimination or being discriminated without your knowledge. Thank you very much.